What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 112 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Slipscreen Games' weekly gaming podcast all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Full steam ahead, boys.
Full steam ahead.
It's a good one. It was a juicy one, baby. We got some news. Steam is changing the way it handles season passes. We got a follow-up to our episode last week about the Steam Controller 2. This is a juicy one, my guys.
Like news. I do like news. I like also just yapping about random stuff. I like news too.
We've just done like 40 minutes of yapping about random stuff.
That's why I like the news, because the unstructured chat, if we have like that's easy. But when there's news, it's like, there's something to talk about. That's even better.
Before we get into any of this news, I want to know: did either of you pick up a white Steam Deck this week before they sold out?
No, I've already got an OLED. I'm not buying a second one. But
I didn't even look.
A couple people in the community did. I know Left Eye Lazy from the Discord, who's a longtime listener and a friend of mine. He picked one up, and he got it like...
Has he got Mario Kart yet, though?
No. I don't think he's got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe yet. He's probably the only person in the world that owns a Nintendo Switch that hasn't bought it yet. And at this point, I guess he's holding out for 10. But he snagged one. And I saw a couple people were like looking to get one and weren't able to snag it or whatever. But at least one of us got one.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The first region that sold out, probably unsurprisingly, was Australia, because there's a lot of people in Australia without Steam Decks currently.
Yeah.
And so now it's available there. The white one's available. You want the new hotness. Why would you not buy that? It was the same deal when like the special edition OLED came out the first time around. Like, I know America only got it, but that's why it sold out so quickly, because one, it's a new OLED model, and also it's in the hot freshness.
Yeah, it's like if you've been on the fence, if you've been waiting for it to come to the region, it's like, yeah, all right, great. Like, why not bite now, right? Get the fancy one.
Mm-hmm.
Get your free Reddit points by posting it and being like, look at my first Steam Deck, baby, and everyone's like, yeah, good job.
Here's my cat in the case. Here's my cat in the case. Here's my baby being born while I'm playing on the Steam Deck. The classic top 3 Reddit
those are my absolute favorites, when it's like, here I am in the waiting room, like my kid was just born, I'm playing Steam Deck, I'm on a boat in the Bahamas, here's my Steam Deck.
They've changed the rules over on that subreddit now. I'm not a massive fan. Like, you can only posts like that on one day a week, and the rest of it has to be like news or other kind of links and things.
Imagine your baby's born the day after that post and you've got to sit on that.
You're like, no,
I know, for a whole week. Oh man.
It's a bummer. I genuinely like those posts. Like, they're silly, but like I do like seeing, like, it's like, just like, here I am in the middle of this, like I was like I'm on a mountain and here's my Steam Deck. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, bro.
That's interesting, but you don't need 50 posts of like, hey, I've joined the crew, and it's just the same. It's the black Steam Deck we've all seen sat on a table doing nothing interesting.
No, if you're in a cool space, that's good. And I'm okay with the cat ones. That's fine too. But yeah, you can't just take a picture of your Steam Deck. We've seen it.
Yeah.
That's what our Discord's for. Come show us a picture of your Steam Deck.
I like people that we care about Steam Decks. I don't care about people on Reddit.
Gotcha. That's fair. That's reasonable. All right, so let's get into it. Steve, why don't you introduce the topic here, because we're getting a pretty big overhaul to the way that season passes work on Steam, and a couple pretty very pro consumer adjustments here that I think people will be excited to hear about.
Yeah, well, currently I don't think there's any kind of official season pass way of doing it on Steam. The way most companies have done it is they'll sell a special edition of the game, which comes included with a season pass, or they'll sell a bundle of DLC together, but then it's all kind of lumped in together as to one purchase. So you couldn't ever get a refund of that DLC if you'd played, say, 2 hours of that DLC. You couldn't get a refund because it was all in one thing. Now what they're doing is essentially allowing developers to create a bundle of DLC. So say, for example, the Starfield DLC, they could bundle it together in a season pass. And within that pass, it would be separate downloads for each of the DLC, and they can then have dates within the future. So they put a new post up on the Steamworks website, which is the developer portal for third-party Steam developers. And they've said when a season pass is made available for purchase on Steam, it must include the following: a complete list of all DLC included in the pass, therefore listing each of the 4 included in a pass, a basic description of the content that's offered in each of the DLCs, and an expected release date for each of the DLCs. A season pass must include at least one release DLC when it's made available for purchase, with the exception of season passes included in a pre-purchase of a deluxe edition. So again, you can do the same deluxe edition and bundle in the season pass. But what this means now is that people can get refunds for it, because if they delay or cancel a DLC and a season pass, customers can now reach out to Valve and say, look, they've cancelled this DLC in the season pass. I want to get a refund, or at least a partial refund. There was going to be 4 DLCs in this season pass. Now they're only doing 3, or they're only doing 2. I want to get some of that cash back. And obviously it's up to Valve's discretion, as it always is, but you're likely to get a refund this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's to your point, right? That's why I think they're like codifying this, right? Like they're like putting it in very plain terms of like, if you're going to do this, this is what you need to promise. You need to hit these certain, milestones or whatever that you told them that's what they were paying for. And, if there's any deviation from that, like, you as a player will finally have some recourse, which is great, Obviously, there's been no shortage of like stories, right? Of like, oh, such and such game comes out and it's supposed to have a DLC plan, and then plans change and the scope of it changes and it takes 2 years and maybe you're not playing the game anymore, like whatever, right? Like, I'm sure that happens to a lot of people.
Now, this might be asking a lot of you guys. Can you think of any sort of major or maybe more recent examples of a game either cancelling a piece of DLC and therefore it doesn't get released anymore, or where a piece of DLC has spun off into something else, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example? Was that still included in the Assassin's Creed? I want to say it was Valhalla. Was Mirage? If you bought that season pass, did you get Mirage for free on launch, or did you then have to buy Mirage separately? Because that was originally supposed to be included, right?
I don't know about Assassin's Creed, but the other example that springs to mind for me would be Uncharted Lost Legacy, and that worked that way, where it was a DLC, and if you had paid for the pass, you basically got it for like half price, and then when it launched, it was bigger, and so they charged more for it. I'm not sure if that's how it worked with Mirage, though.
I remember it was originally a DLC. It was supposed to be included in the season pass, and then it got a full release. Now I'm wondering if that happened in this, if you would get a refund for that chunk of the DLC, and then you'd be able to buy the DLC separately. I guess is my
my guess would be that they would refund the entirety of the DLC, and then you'd be able to do what Steve said, where you could go back in and like repurchase access to the DLC that you actually want, or like. Right. Or like I guess, for example, in that case, right, say that they were like, okay, like we're selling you the Assassin's Creed season pass, and there's going to be 4 pieces of DLC, and one of those is going to be a new campaign called Assassin's Creed Mirage. Oh, that's been spun out. Well, now we need to like take that pack down and put up a new one and issue refunds and whatever. Or I guess honor it, to your point, and just give them a copy of the game, and then they're eating shit on how much,
So they do actually call this out specifically on the Steamworks article.
Okay.
There's a few options that developers have. So the first thing, the default option, is whenever the developer goes into the portal and cancels a piece of DLC, customers will automatically be offered a refund for the value of that one unreleased DLC. So say it was a season pass with 4 items that was $20, they'd be offered a $5 refund. And that would get added to their Steam account as credit. But there are other actions that can happen, including removing a season pass from sale. So say they decide to take the whole thing offline. Maybe it was an online game and they're taking down like a season pass element. They can refund all customers who purchased a season pass the value of unreleased DLC or the entire season pass. And apparently the value of unreleased DLC will be decided in discussion with Valve. So it's not... I guess if they sell it separately, then presumably Valve will be able to take a look at it and see what that was. It's not going to be like, say, there's a little piece of horse armor in there along with Shivering Isles. You can't say that Shivering Isles that's now got cancelled was, worth half the value of that whole season pass, because the horse armor is clearly worth like $1, even if they did charge 10 for it.
That's interesting. Okay. I guess that makes sense. So it's basically like when this event triggers, right? Like when the decision to change what's been sold happens, you kind of enter this if-then statement. And it's like, does the developer can choose to issue a refund? If they issue a refund that's not satisfactory or whatever, Valve has has a clause where they can step in and whatever. So, okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think overall this is a really good change, obviously. This is like a very pro-consumer move to just give folks the opportunity to, like get what they paid for, right? And if there's a situation where, the needle moves, yeah, that's good. It's good that like folks will have the opportunity to, to walk away and not feel like they got burned because they wanted to be an early adopter or they wanted to support a game that they were interested in or whatever. And I think that'll probably help with some of the negative sentiment that, you see around some of these events, like when they happen, right? Like I think we can all understand the idea that plans change or whatever, but when you've already plunked down money for something you were promised and then it doesn't come through or it's late or whatever, like, yeah, like that's, that there should be some kind of accountability there probably.
My big question is, when you see a sign on the road and it says like, this area is 50, not, national speed limit, or you see a sign that's like, mind your head or watch the gap, blah, blah, blah. Something's happened to cause that sign to be up there, right?
Right.
Wet paint, duck, mind your head, all that sort of stuff. This has happened. They've made this change, and the big, season passes have been around for a long time now. There's, 2 generations we've had now of this style of release. What has happened or what is going to happen that has caused Valve to want to do this? That's what I want to know. What is the incident that made the sign?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we've seen an incident. I mean, there have been some recent DLC cancellations, like Cyberpunk had one cancelled back in June. There's apparently Insomniac has cancelled the Spider-Man 2 story DLC, and this goes all the way back to like 2017 when the Batman Arkham Origins DLC was cancelled on the Wii U, and they just refunded the entire season pass in that case. That was a decision made by Nintendo. I was thinking maybe this is Valve actually wanting to offer a season pass themselves for one of their games, and maybe that they just want to clarify it and be pro-consumer.
Oh,
and the same way
dude.
that we've saw.
Yeah, Deadlock, right? Like that's probably gonna have a season pass, right? Like that's probably what this is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they do make a point to say what the difference between a season pass and a battle pass is. And a battle pass is like, as we know, like an ongoing thing that you can unlock certain things. And that is not what they would consider a season pass. But they could be adding like, extra hero characters in there that you get when you buy like a season pass, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. It's interesting as to why we see it, but it could also be just because, like I said, they want to be pro-consumer. We saw a month or so ago that they are no longer doing the forced arbitration clause, and they're making it clear on the checkout page that you're buying a license for a game. You're not buying an actual piece of you're not buying an actual entity. It's a license and a key essentially for a piece of software.
Right.
This could all be antitrust stuff. This could all be have come out in lawsuits. It could be class action. All these things could have come up, and Valve are like maybe getting ahead of things, or just clarifying so that these things don't happen in the future. Maybe, and maybe they've identified some problems.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it was a case of just like they've gotten a few like refund requests, or they've had like consistent complaints about some of these issues or whatever, and that it's just like, all right, like we need to have a rule. There needs to be a clause of some kind that, like directly spells out what happens, in the same way that like you just brought up, like that store interaction, right? Steve is like, that exists so that when somebody comes calling and being like, what, I don't own it? It's like, yeah, we warned you about that. Like it was a big button that you saw and you agreed to, right? So it's like, I'm sure on some level it is just like wanting to kind of like,
it's like covering themselves as well as the consumer. I mean, Nintendo does this on the eShop, and they have since, I think, the Wii U era, where there's a big checkbox in Europe that says you agree by purchasing this that you waive your right to the 14-day cancellation window, that you can't cancel this purchase anymore, because that by default is the law, that if you buy something online, you have 14-day cooling off period to cancel it. But if you've downloaded the game and bought it, kind of tough shit.
Right. And then this is kind of like, the opposite, right? Because it's like it's to defend the consumer interest there. But like, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, right, like as much as like obviously we're all here because of Valve's hardware, and we talked about it all last week and everything. It was like their bread and butter is Steam, right? And anything that they can do to make the Steam user base, like confident that this is the best place to buy games, of which they already feel that way broadly, right?
Yeah,
It's
I mean, that's a good point. Like Epic Game Store might already have that support for season passes, and it's like if this is something that potentially, it might not even be from the consumer side, it might be something the developers are asking for, because we've seen games released this year with season passes, and last year, like the Starfield, for example. Like, I'm surprised they didn't have this solution already.
That's a good point too. That like I wouldn't be surprised if there were developers who were like, hey, like it would be great if there was some sort of back end tool for us so that we can still sell a season pass at the beginning of a game's launch to make extra money and fund development of the content that's going to go in that pass. But like, when plans change and people start, like complaining, right? It's like you want to have the ability, like the fact that there is a developer tool where they can be like, hey, we're canceling the 4th DLC, here's a refund. And it's just like there's no controversy, there's no back and forth. Valve doesn't have to process a bunch of requests. You don't have to see a bunch of articles on Kotaku or whatever that are like, oh my god,
people
like,
going crazy on Reddit, maybe review bombing a game. It's all these things that it's just probably really annoying for Valve.
You just cut out the middleman, and it's just like, okay, it's done, and like even if you're mad that the DLC got canceled, it's like, well, I got a refund, so it's like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's like some people will probably still go complain, but I think you probably reduce the like number of, like, to your point, the number of people like on that game's Reddit or on the Steam, message boards or whatever, like lighting it up, being like, what the fuck? Like, you took money from me, like I am owed something and you didn't give it to me. And now it's kind of like, all right, well.
I do wonder if that is going to cause issues, though. The fact that Valve is the one that seemingly decides the value of the DLC. Where do they kind of discern that value? Obviously, if it's sold separately, that's an easy one to do, right? You sold separately, add up the value of all the DLCs that were going to be sold or are sold, figure out what the discount was for the season pass, and then refund that minus like 20% for whatever the discount was.
Well, you've also got to think about like, maybe the point is there that like if it's a larger chunk of the DLC, no, you're right. If it's already split up separately, it is. But
that's the thing though. But if it's not split up separately, and the only way you can access this DLC is potentially through the season pass, because if they've not put the separate products up as a pre-release item, and some DLC might be that you've got to buy it as part of the season pass. How does Valve make that decision if they don't really know the worth of all of the DLC in the pack, especially if they're not released yet?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do think I am. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I feel like ultimately it's good that it's Valve's decision, because they're like at least a third-party arbitrator, right? Where it's like, obviously the consumer is going to want as much money refunded as they can get, right? And in their mind, they can build up the DLC was going to be this, and it was going to do this for the game, and it never came, and now like, so this is all worthless. And the developer would want to ideally undersell it, right? And it's like, oh, I want to give you the least amount of money back that I can give back without it being controversial. So like Valve kind of existing as like the final judge and on the situation, I think is good, because then like they have interest. They have a vested interest in keeping both parties happy, right? Because if the consumer walks away feeling like they get burned, then they feel hesitant to buy the next game on Steam or the next season pass or next DLC, and they might not spend as much money. And if the developer feels like they get burned, then obviously that's not great either, because then that damages a relationship where Valve makes money. So yeah, I mean, the hope, right, is that like, I guess somewhere in the system, right, you reach a fair answer, and who makes that decision seems like it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, because if the developer issues a refund and everybody's like, great, then it's like, cool. Then Valve literally has no lines in that play, right? It's only when there's like a conflict or when there's a disagreement on the value that it sounds like that's when they would step in, right?
I hope so. Yeah, seemingly. But like, It's remains to be seen. Like Max said, I don't think we've seen any examples of this. I can't remember any news stories of recent where people have been complaining that a DLC got cancelled and they didn't get a refund for it, or even a season pass being sold on Steam. I guess they do exist, but
I think
that would have not been sold through like this.
I think
You
to
can
your
buy
point,
deluxe versions and stuff, but that just comes with like a list of DLC. Like Dragon's Dogma, for example, people were up in arms that Dragon's Dogma had all these microtransactions because what people didn't see was that was just you buy the deluxe edition, which comes with 10 of these, 20 of these, 50 of these, whatever, additional items. And those things, if you didn't buy the deluxe edition, you went in to buy the original one, you could just buy each one of those pieces of DLC one by one. What that looks like was pay $99, 99 cents, get an unlimited number of these things. And I think there was a controversy. I don't know how I'm supposed to fucking say that word. There was an issue that people were kicking off. People were kicking off about they were saying, "Oh, it's unfair. It's microtransactions, blah blah blah." But if it was laid out as a season pass like this, and it was just one thing that you buy that included all of these different things, there would probably be less of an. They're like, "Oh, you buy a pack of stuff," as opposed to
and there's a few games I can think that would have helped with. Like the Assassin's Creed games are notorious for having stuff like that, and like the level up passes and things like that enable you to get experience quicker. Pointless to me, but I understand if you're time limited and you want to play a game and get through it quickly, then that's an option. I personally feel like that should be something that's baked into the game for free. And then Hitman is a perfect example of something that would have been perfect for a season pass, and they did season passes on other platforms where it was available, and they had to sell it as separate DLC, and then it became confusing with like the Hitman access passes and the Hitman 2 access pass, and it just all became really confusing. Obviously now that's one single purchase, but something like a season pass where it outlines you get X, Y, and Z for this fixed price, and this is going to come out at this time, sometime in 2025 or 2026, I think is only a good thing.
Yeah, it's just it's making language clear for people so nobody feels like they're getting scammed, and giving tools for developers, right, to streamline the process. So yeah, good on Valve. I think this is a win. I think this is definitely something that it benefits both sides of the transaction here. All right, so let's talk Steam Controller 2. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go check out those shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flip Screen Games podcast, where we talk about what's going on in the world of video games outside of Steam and Valve and the Steam Deck, go check them out. If you enjoy this show, I can guarantee you'll enjoy those shows as well. That is the Flip Screen Games of Approval, coined by Max. That's it. Go listen to our shows. They're good. All right. You want to be a Patreon supporter? Go above and beyond? Great. We appreciate it. Let's get back to the show. So, we talked all about it last week. If you missed last week's show, there was a report that we got into in detail. I would go listen to that episode for context. But the kind of TLDR is we've had this codename Deckard, right, for a long time. That's the everybody believes anyway to be their next VR headset. And then we got another, like a trademark for another controller. And what was the codename again? It was another Blade Runner reference, but I can't think. Roy, thank you. Codenamed Roy. So that kind of got us thinking that, okay, this is probably a VR controller, right? And a like specifically a Deckard accessory and not a general Steam controller too. Now this week, perhaps there's both, right?
Yeah, it seems like that's the case. Sadly, it's Brad Lynch over on X again, doing some digging along with Shiny Quagsire. Found a bunch of things that basically confirmed that the Roy controller we were talking about last week was in fact the Deckard controller, that there are two controllers. They found strings that talk about left and right hands and things like that, and the fact that every button is capacitive seemingly on the Deckard controller,
Real
on the
quick,
Roy controller.
If someone doesn't know, define capacitive.
So, when you tap on the sticks on your Steam Deck and it can activate the gyro or do an action, it's that. When you touch it, it can do something. This is similar to like the Valve Index controllers. When you're holding on the grip, it knows that your hands are there and it can sense them.
Like you can like look, your fingers can curl and things like that. It can react to those kinds of things.
So seemingly that is going to follow through to the next iteration of their controllers for VR, which we would have expected. I think it was kind of a given that they would keep that tech there. It's kind of necessary to be able to play something like Half-Life Alyx. But further than that, Brad mentioned that the Steam Controller 2 is a separate product from Decade's Roy controllers, and its code name is Ibex. And both are now being tooled for mass production goal in their factories right now. That's why I know they're in later stages of productization. And he clarified this and said, I'm seeing some confusion out there. Tooling for mass production does not equal mass production. It can take up to a year for tooling to finish and lead up to the product shipping to consumers. But you don't collaborate this type of effort unless you're definitely planning to launch it. So looks like we're definitely getting a Steam Controller 2, which is a nice and official one.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, this has been like number one on our wish list for how long, right? Like every time it's like, what do you guys want to see them do next? What's the best thing they could do for this? It's a Steam controller. It would be really cool to see a good Steam Controller 2 that, learns from the good parts of the first one, take some of that user feedback into consideration, learn from, all the cool things that the deck does that didn't. Yeah, I mean, this is super exciting. I hope that it is not as far as a year out. It would be great to see, this drop maybe early next year or like halfway through the year or something like that. But yeah, this is definitely very exciting news.
Yeah,
I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later.
Go ahead, Max.
I would. We spoke last week about if Roy and Deckard were potentially going to be announced during the Game Awards, and I do think he says here not to get too excited, but it would be a good time to, announce something like this at the Game Awards, and then, I guess
if you think about like the announcement of the Steam Deck, right? That was like 6 or 7 months prior. They did that piece with IGN as kind of an exclusive, being like, this is what it is. I think it might have even been longer than that. I think it might have been 9 months by the time it actually released. And, I could see that potentially they could announce it at the Game Awards. It comes out June, July next year. Maybe it slips a bit, but you could put it out, maybe pre-orders open then. And it gives them time then to get other developers on board, because I do think with something like the Steam Deck, they needed that. They needed to get this in developers' hands, and that's what they did. And I think as soon as you start sending things like that out, it leaks. As soon as the Deckard gets in developers' hands, that's when we know it's real. That's when we know that this is a real thing. And I think that Valve is the kind of company that just wants to get ahead of that. Weirdly, they didn't when it came to their game, Deadlock, and they just like put it out and just like, yeah, sure, whatever, play it if you want, or we don't care, share it with your friends, and never made a formal announcement about it. But I think with something like a piece of hardware, they want to explain what it is, need an explanation as to why you need a Deckard over a Quest 3 or over an Index.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me, the fact that they would handle those things differently, because like when you think about like marketing a video game, right? Like it's such a dance, and like nobody agrees on how to do it. Like we have peers who like vocally, and I'm gonna say it, bitch and moan about how, why do they show a trailer for a game that's 6 years away? Why are they? And it's like, it's marketing, right? Like it's like there are some ideas that need to be communicated over a longer period of time. There are some, you want to keep it in top of mind, you want to keep it in the conversation. But like for Valve, they have this advantage that no other, developer, publisher, however you want to categorize them, right? Like has, where like they have the biggest, like one of the biggest captive audiences in the world, that they're like the de facto place to play PC games. So like for them, it's like, okay, yeah, it's like we have this new game and we're ready for people to start trying it. It's like, why would we spend money or like time to go to an event or make a sizzle trailer when we can just put it on Steam, you know, and it's like, and have like people were talking about like, can I get a code? How do I get a code? Like, it's like it does the work for itself. And it's like, why talk about a game that's in early access where you can just let people play it and see how good it is, and then talk about it when it's actually like somewhere near 1.0 and you want to sell it to the people that aren't already dialed in on Steam playing it every day, right? Like, it's like, it makes sense. Whereas like hardware, it's like, well, yeah, like the deck was the first time they've ever done something like that. Like, we had a whole conversation last week. And thanks to everybody who wrote in with the comments. We had a really great conversation on the Discord about the VR stuff. You know, like VR is a niche product, right? In an industry that like a lot of people, myself included, like think is failing, right? So the idea that they would want to announce that earlier and like show off, you know, maybe whatever, not necessarily another Half-Life game, but like the next Half-Life Alyx type experience where it's like, here's our killer app, here's how our controllers are really dynamic and like really improving, you know, gameplay. And you know, we have like these popular VR games that, you know, are coming to it and they're better on our platform because of the controller. Or like, you know, you want to have opportunities to like walk people through the tech and like, to your point, Steve, like sell them on the vision of why they should buy it rather than deadlocked. It's like, why would I tell you why you should play it when you could just play it?
Download it for free.
It's on Steam. Download it and play it, bro. Like,
Yeah.
get into it. And like that, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me given how they like to handle things. Like, they play cards close to their chest unless they don't, and then they just lay them on the table. And I feel like they're very smart about when to just be transparent rather than, this needs to be a secret, we need to save it for this Jeff Keighley event or this, you know, arbitrary marketing milestone. It's just like, yeah, it's like that. They have a level of, you know, connection to the people they're trying to sell to that like other people pay money for, and they just don't need to.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think also their audience is just a lot more nerdy than the average consumer that's, you know, maybe dialed into the Game Awards and is like, oh, I'm here to see the latest video games. I think if you're gonna and maybe if you're gonna announce something like the Deckard and the Roy controllers or the Ibex controller, I could see the Ibex controller being announced at the Game Awards very easily. It's like, that's an easy sell. It's like, oh, you know, the Steam Deck, you love all the input methods on it, you love the back paddles, you love the track pads. Well, here's a controller that has all of it, and it works perfectly with Steam input, and it's got gyro, and it's got the haptic sticks that you like, and it's got rumble, and it's got yada, yada, yada. That I could see being an easy sell. I'd pre-order one day one. I'd be like, fuck yeah, this is the controller I've been waiting for forever.
And that's a mass market product, right? Like, it's like, this is the best controller you can use on PC now. It's like a very easy, like, you know, elevator pitch for a product at the Game Awards, right? It's like, oh, great.
Let's say it's DualSense price at like $60, something like that. I don't, £60 or whatever.
Yeah, probably like 70 now, but
yeah, that's still a very attractive offer, a prospect of like, this is the one PC controller that does everything. This is the controller for PC gamers now. That is such a big prospect that even if you don't own a Steam Deck, you can use that. And if you do own a Steam Deck, maybe this is the thing that pushes you, because you're like, that TV experience was never going to be there for me, but now it is.
Yeah. Now I can potentially browse the web, or I can play Age of Empires or that other RTS that I wanted to play. Maybe I could play a point and click adventure, stuff that I could potentially never play on my TV before.
Or like, you know, I know, Steve, like you've gone through the process of like creating custom like layouts for certain games, and it's like, well, how nice would it be to just be able to be like, well, no, I can just I don't have to change the layout, right? It's the same controller. Yeah,
so my custom layout I have pretty much for every game is I'll put crouch on the back paddle on R4, and I'll put when I hold down the left trigger, that's what I use to activate the gyro, rather than putting my finger on the sticks, so that when I'm aiming, I can be in gyro and it's a lot more precise. And when I'm not aiming, I'm just using the sticks to move around. And I way prefer that. And I use that profile on everything. So you're right, Pete. If I could then use that profile and play the same game on the TV and use the controller, that would be the dream. But that's exactly what I would want. Or even if I had a PC, right? And I'm used to playing on the Steam Deck, and I like the gyro stuff, and I want to be able to play that on on my big PC at home as well. That opens up that option as well, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this is just another. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, like it's why did it?
It seems obvious, right?
Yeah, it's like why did it take this long to do this? You know, but it's like, but whatever.
I think
like,
because the Steam controller was such a disaster for them, right?
It really was.
Like, this is no good, you know. So it's like, why would you put another controller out after that embarrassment? But I feel like they've learned so much with the Steam Deck, and people want it, and they've been asking for it and crying out for it.
It's one of those things where it's like I hear what you're saying, where it's like, oh yeah, like I guess like technically like, you know, it was a flop, so it's like why go back to that well? But it's like, I mean, yeah, it's like you could add, that's the same logic I applied fucking 2 years ago when it's like they're making the Steam Deck. It's like don't they remember the Steam machines? It's like, yeah, just do it different this time. Do it good. Now that you've proven that you can nail hardware, like this is going to be, you know,
do it right.
This was their third and fourth at bat at like a more proprietary hardware, right? Because I think a big part of the Steam machines was that they were like partnered with other people, and it was
it was like Alienware's building one for you.
It's so
You're
confusing. It's like, what is this, right? Like, what even is this? Whereas like the deck, I think was so successful because it's like it's a PC that's a handheld, great, like that. It just makes sense in the same way that like this is the de facto PC controller now. Makes sense. It's an easy value proposition. This is now the best VR headset on the market. That's an easy value proposition. And I think they've got whoa, sorry, I got tripped up there. They've gotten a lot better at like understanding what people want, boiling it down, and communicating why, even if you're outside of PC gaming, right? Like the Steam Deck might be for you, which is why, to your point, that's why they advertise it at the Game Awards, right? Because there's probably a lot of people that watch the Game Awards that like don't play on PC and are not aware of the Steam Deck and like, you know, have heard about the benefits of the Steam ecosystem but have never been able to take advantage of it. And the same way that them releasing it in, you know, parts of Asia where like people are really into handhelds but not so much into PC gaming. It's like that was a good strategic decision. And I this to me just feels like the next domino, right? Of like, great, awesome. Now I can have a companion controller that works with my rig, works with my deck, lets me have the PC, you know,
connects to your phone, plays with the games that potentially come into Android.
Yeah,
or,
that's a good point.
Or streaming, you know.
Yeah, cloud streaming. Just stop it. I can only get so excited. You guys are saying all the right words.
It's cool.
It's yeah. Okay, now on the topic of Steam machines, how could they fuck this up?
I think they fuck it up if it doesn't have enough input methods on it, in the same way that the original Steam controller didn't. And every single person I've had come over to my house and I've got the Steam controller out and I'm controlling the Steam Deck with it, they're like, what the fuck is that? Like weird looking inside out controller. Like where's the other stick? Like how does this work? Nobody gets it. I think it needs to be a traditional looking controller with trackpads. And I think if they do that, they won't screw it up, and it needs to have good battery life. If it's got battery life that's like 3 minutes, no.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think for my money, the way you fuck it up is if you do anything other than it is exactly all of the Steam Deck inputs on a controller. And that might mean it's going to be a little big, but I think just let it be big. I would rather it be big and have trackpads and all the buttons that I need to have like perfect parity between those two devices, rather than it be like normal controller size, you know, like let it be a
I think we've seen
Deck, isn't it? So
we've seen from the Steam Deck that things can be big but also comfortable and ergonomic, because I know that was one of your big concerns when you first got the deck, or you were considering buying it. And I was just like, no, it's really comfy, like fits in your hand perfectly, the buttons are where you want them to be, with maybe the exception of the B button that's a little bit out far to the right. But I think if they can do something similar to that, I think it's a winner.
I feel like
people are going to buy it anyway.
To your point, right? Like the first time you pick up the Steam Deck, at least in my experience and everybody I know that's bought it, it's like you look at it and you're like, that thing is huge. And then you pick it up and you're like, it's really comfortable to hold though. So like whatever. You know, it's like, great, do that, right? Like like literally make a ergonomic, like let it, I don't care if it's Wii U gamepad sized. Like if it works the way we want it to work, that's good enough for me.
If it can play, even if it's a second Steam Deck and it just attaches to via Bluetooth to your TV, like, you know, as long as it can do all the things I need it to do, but I also get to look at the big screen, I'm golden. You know, I'm not carrying this around with me everywhere. I'm not putting this in my bag anywhere. I'm not, the only thing I want to, the furthest I'm going to travel with this is up the stairs to my PC and then down the stairs to my TV. That's it.
Yeah, right. Like my goal will be to have it, on top of my PC, right? And then it's like bring it upstairs if I want to use big picture mode, which is great. Because when you're on the go, you have your Steam Deck. Why do you need the controller, right? Like that's the point. So it's like, I lean into that a little bit for my money.
Yeah, the only thing I'd need after that is like a little keyboard attachment or something that like the Xbox. Like the Xbox 360 chat pad thing.
Yeah.
Have that in the bottom. I can be typing then.
Have you ever seen the this is like my favorite like insane video game peripheral. It's like there's the GameCube controller for Phantasy Star Online that's literally just it's a GameCube controller and it's an entire keyboard in the center. It's like the most unhinged product to have ever been developed, and it's so awesome.
I love that.
Absolutely wild.
When Smash Brothers came out, I wanted to have one of those so I could play online because you couldn't do the proper communication.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating with that keyboard. It really is. I mean, I had the keyboard for the Dreamcast, but at least that thing could go online and like you could type and stuff, or you could play. What was that game? Like, it's not House of the Dead. It was like Typing of the Dead or something. And you basically played House of the Dead, but you typed words and it taught you how to type.
That's funny.
And like every single word you would type, you'd kill a zombie instead of shooting it out of the screen.
Cool. Yeah, the only like goofy thing like that I have is I have one of the mouses from Mario Paint.
Oh, nice.
Which is really cool.
They're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really cool.
I've always wanted to. I want to like chop the end off and turn it into a real mouse, or put an adapter on it or something so you can use it.
I bet that would be so awful to use as well.
Yeah,
like, it's not going to be a company mouse.
It's so clunky. It's like very, or not clunky. It's like boxy. It's like yeah.
Has it got a ball in the bottom? Is it one of those old mice with the ball?
I think it must, right? It must be before. I can't remember. I haven't looked at it in a while. It's it's in a box, but
everyone used to nick those at school. They take them out the bottom of the mouse, and you get to the computer and you'd be like, "Oh, for fuck's sake! There's no ball there. Someone's stolen it."
I used to like taking it out and then just rolling it around in my hands.
They were so satisfying. Yeah, so satisfying.
But also, you'd have to like take it off and rub it down, wouldn't you? Because it'd be like
you'd have to like take the lint off the little cylinders inside. And I used to take it out and I'd just play with the cylinders and be like, see how far I could get the cursor on the screen to move. I was a small-minded child, I had not much to do.
That's not small-minded. You're out here trying to understand how things work. Give yourself a break.
That's engineering.
That's a future programmer.
It was fun. That and scribbling around in Microsoft Paint and then filling in the holes with different colors. That was great.
Yeah, good times. Well, we'll wrap it there for the day, gang. Thank you for joining us here in another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. Let us know what you think about the changes to season passes. I don't think anybody is going to have anything negative to say about that one, so I'm far more interested to hear what you think about the prospect of a Steam controller too. I know so many of you are excited about this just like us, and I would love to hear, is this a day one purchase for you guys? What are the make or break features that it needs to have for you to want to grab one? Could you see yourself, making this your new de facto PC controller? I'm interested in hearing what you guys think. So, however you want to get involved, show your support, or write into the show, you can do all that and much more by heading to flipscreen.games. That's our website. Go over there, click on some stuff. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us here for another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.